Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to talk about something a little bit more scary than the rest. If you watch some of my videos you might be wondering, well, how does all of this apply to me? And this video is going to talk about how all of this applies to you. And it's going to be extremely difficult to accept something like this because it's just, as human beings, you get into this mentality of, well, if I wouldn't do it, then somebody else probably wouldn't do it, and if it sounds really crazy, then it's probably not happening. The problem with that logic is that in the world that we live in, crazy sells, crazy makes money, and at the end of the day, if someone is crazy, they are willing to do things that you're not, and by default of them being willing to do certain things, it means that they will automatically, in a way, have a higher standing in the world than you because they're more willing to get their hands dirty. They're more willing to do the things that other people don't want. And this directly leads to them being in places of power because if they're willing to do things nobody else is, well, then they're going to get recognition for that. And someone's going to appreciate their special abilities to do things that no other person would agree to. And that's sad, but that's sort of the world that we live in. I want to start by saying that a lot of what I'm discovering is because I was willing to study history. I haven't studied in great detail, and I'm not going to go over it in great detail, but I just kind of want to highlight some points. This is not something that's new. I didn't just make this up yesterday. This has been something that's been prevalent in human societies for a long time, but it's just not talked about that much. One of those things is human sacrificing. Now, I'm not saying that we do human sacrificing anymore. It wouldn't make sense to because of the way that our societies are designed. People would think that it's absolutely crazy. But we're still doing it in a different way. We're enslaving people and putting them in cages in our prison systems and basically locking them up until they rot and die. We are actually committing mass murders of entire populations in different countries and not thinking twice about it. There's still genocides occurring in Africa and a lot of other countries in the world. So if someone wants to argue that this stuff isn't relevant and that it's not happening, I would like you to please go and look up the world, and you'll see a lot of this is happening right now as I'm speaking. So this is something really interesting. It's human sacrificing, and a lot of you guys might be wondering what the hell I'm talking about. Well, I'll explain it so it's simplified a little bit more, and that's what I'm going to touch on in this, is just simplified so that people can really understand it. In the past, human sacrificing was a way that they could control the population, and it was easy to convince people that the gods needed their hearts in order to eat, or whatever they told their people. I don't know, I wasn't around, and I really don't really care what they told them, but they made this like a cultural norm that every couple of years or months, I don't know what the details are, they would do these human sacrificings. Now, this might not sound very alarming to people, but what you have to kind of wonder at this point is on what scale were these human sacrificings done? There's been some reports that it was like, oh, it was nothing major, but if you actually studied this and if you actually kind of went into it a little bit, which I'll be honest, I haven't studied it that much, but I've heard of some prominent people speaking about this, and I've been interested, and I heard some people talking about books that they've written on this, and they kind of went into a little bit of detail on this. And I mean, this isn't something that it's not real. This actually happened. So as far as I'm aware, the scale of these human sacrificings were like massive. They would march like 20,000 people up like some stairs, like this picture shows here, and they would put them on these like stone things, and then there would be like this holy man that would come with like this blunt instrument and just smash their chest open, and they would rip out their hearts, and they would chop off their heads and all this other crazy stuff, and just like, you know what I mean, like throw the heart somewhere and then just like roll the body down the stairs. Now, this sounds really crazy, but they actually did this stuff, and there's proof that they did. And what's even more crazy is the fact that they had to have fully trained cleanup crews involved in these operations, because you can't just sacrifice like 500 people and just like go back home. Like, it doesn't work that way. What happens to the 500 bodies? That's like, you know what I mean? Like, these temples aren't like, they're big, but I mean, 500 dead bodies in the temple, you leave that for a couple days, you come back, you're not going to want to be anywhere near that thing. So they had groups of people that would haul these bodies out and go and like throw them somewhere, like burn them or bury them. I don't know exactly what they did, but this wasn't just like one or two guys sacrificed. This was like they would take their population and thin it out. This was basically the one of the documented ways that humans have controlled population growth in the past. And they would have these groups of guys come and pick up the pieces of the bodies and take them different places and bury them, or whatever the case was. But this is, I mean, you can research this. If you don't believe me, by all means, please go and research this and tell me what you find. So what am I going to? Well, human population control is happening right now. We're at a point in time where the human population is growing out of control. Some people aren't aware of this, but we are reproducing at a crazy fast rate. It's actually exponential growth right now. So, and I can't prove this, what I'm saying right now, I can't prove, but you know, I like to look at things like around me, and I like to come up with my own conclusions, and this is sort of one of those things that I've concluded over the years. Circumcision, in my opinion, has been one of the sort of secretive ways that the population growth has been tried to be controlled. And the reason I feel this way is because, one, I'm not circumcised, okay? All of the reasons so far that I've read about circumcision, it sounds like complete nonsense to me. They say that there's all these like medical ways to circumcise and why it's useful, and you know, it prevents like urinary tract infections, and it prevents other infections, and human something virus, and something 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 I can't even understand, and all this other like, again, and then cancers. Oh geez, it prevents cancer. Yeah, cutting off a chunk of your parts is going to prevent cancer. That's you know, that's fresh right there, right? It'll prevent cancer. Oh geez, that's so great. Adverse effects, okay, sexual effects. So let me tell you guys why I think that they did this, okay? I think that they did this because there's a crucial nerve which has been cut off. Like, you can circumcise somebody, like let's say for example, if it was for, you know, like they're doing it for medical reasons so that you don't get infections. One, I've never been circumcised. I have never had a urinary tract infection in my entire life. Okay? I have not had a urinary tract infection. I've had other like bacterial infections that, you know, I don't want to get into, but I can tell you one thing right now, it's not because I wasn't circumcised. And I think that it's quite common for people to say that, oh, you should get circumcised so you don't get infections, but I'll tell you right now, that's a complete pile of shit. The one interesting thing that they do is they cut a nerve ending at the very tip of your stuff. It's at the bottom, and when they cut this off, it reduces how much pleasure you get from having sex. So my theory is that one of the reasons that this has been done so widespread in the world without anyone's consent, they just kind of do it in the hospital after you're born, like no one will notice, is to control the population growth. Well, they assume that if you're not getting as much stimulation from sex, then you might not have as much sex, and this may lead to slowing down the population growth by, you know, reducing how pleasurable sex is. I mean, the logic is not like that great, but I mean, honestly, I can't see any other reason why people would do this. I'll be honest, the reasons that they're giving is complete horseshit. I haven't been circumcised, and I can tell you right now, it has not bothered me a single day in my life. And I've talked to people that have been circumcised, and I've listened to a lot of them speak out about how they wish they were never circumcised, because they say that this hasn't benefited them in any way, that it just cuts down on how pleasurable sex is. And so I feel like this is kind of one of the things that they kind of swept under the rug, and this is what they kind of used for a little while as population control. Now, you can find a lot of interesting stuff about population control, and some of it is cool and interesting, some of it is complete crap, and some of it is just plain scary. So I want to get into how this affects you. And I don't care if you're circumcised, please don't leave comments about this. I mean, if you really want to, knock yourself out. But this is getting really, really out of hand. This, you can see right here, is a map of the different regions in the world and what their populations look like. And as you can see, Africa is pretty heavy in the reproduction rates, and honestly, I'm really glad that they are, because their country and their people have been so heavily targeted for their natural resources, and they're being targeted with biological agents, and they're being targeted with economic warfare. I commend them for reproducing a lot more than the rest of the world, because they're trying to survive. We have, naturally as humans, we have these built-in sort of systems where if we're under threat, or if we feel like someone's trying to wipe us out, naturally we reproduce faster. Why? Well, if there's more of us around, then there's a smaller chance that our genetic makeup is going to die. And I think that it's great that this graph is representing this. So anyways, that's a different talk for a different day. Okay, so where am I going with this? Well, something really interesting has been happening in California. I'm originally from California, and something very interesting has happened in California, which this extremely intelligent person and probably scientist, Mr. Dane Wigington, I don't know if he's a scientist, but he talks like one, sheds a lot of light on. If you guys do not know about this guy, you need to YouTube him. His name is Dane Wigington. He's been talking about the geoengineering which is happening around the world. And some people might go, well, what's geoengineering and how does it have anything to do with circumcision? Well, it's actually quite simple. Geoengineering is basically what's known as chemtrails. So chemtrails, you can look it up, it says conspiracy theory. But if you look up geoengineering, it will actually give the scientific details of what it is and how it's working and what's going on with it. Geoengineering is basically where the government or whatever organization decides that they can control the air and that they can spray the air with aerosolized metals and other chemical agents in order to what they say is an attempt to control the weather. Now, I think that this is complete bullshit, and I'll tell you guys my reasoning. It's been used for warfare in the past. It's been used in the past in Iran. There are people who have spoken out about this. I challenge anybody to look this up and prove me wrong. It's been used, it's been theorized to have been used in Africa. You can see pictures of animals dying from thirst or not having enough grass to eat. So this is something that's been used in war. So we wonder, if this is something that's been used to war, why is it now coming to California? And there is no doubt, there is no question anymore that this is coming to California. It's happened. It's been documented. I'll show you guys a video right now that shows just what's going on with this. You can do all this research yourself too if you like. I'm just trying to explain this, trying to bring all of the pieces together so that you guys can sort of understand how it all ties in together and how this actually affects you and everybody else that you know and everybody around you. The reason that this is coming to the United States, California in particular, is because California has really different political ideas and views than a lot of the United States. And it's, in my opinion, it's going to spread throughout the rest of the world. I think that California is just the beginning of the United States. I have a feeling that it's going to spread, and I hope to God that I'm wrong. But while this is going on, I can't just kind of sit here and ignore it. Now, I'm going to play a short video for you guys that kind of gives his little rundown of it, and then after this I'll continue.
Jet aircraft are filling our skies with highly toxic metal nanoparticulates and chemical elements. This film footage is yet one more smoking gun which absolutely proves this reality. There is no rational denial of the fact that the jet in this video is spraying. The atmospheric experiments in our skies are real and ongoing. Each and every one of us is a part of this massive and lethal experiment. We have absolutely no choice in the matter. Climate engineering is the greatest assault ever launched against life on Earth by the human race. Weather modification programs have been steadily ramped up for over 6 decades. Historical data proves this beyond any shadow of a doubt. The ozone layer is being shredded. There is a total disruption of the hydrological cycle, which is creating drought and deluge. Our air, soils, and waters are being completely contaminated by the toxic fallout from the spraying. The amount of academicians in government and private agencies that are lying, either to protect their paycheck or to protect their state of mind, is well beyond comprehension. Though the entire climate science community is discussing the geoengineering issue, none admit it has long since been fully deployed. nor do they admit every living organism, including each and every one of us, must now inhale the toxic elements being sprayed into our skies. With each and every breath, our bodies become more contaminated with the bioavailable heavy metals that lab tests prove are raining down on us. The very existence of these programs and the percentage of the population which is willing to lie about them is truly a tragic testimony to the moral degeneration of modern man. We face a very immediate choice. We can wake up and join the fight for the common good and for the future of our children, with our first priority being to expose and halt the global climate engineering insanity, or we can all go down with the ship, and it is sinking by the day. Stand up, make your voice heard, join us in this critical battle for life on Earth. This is Dane Wigington with Geoengineeringwatch.org.
So, he talks a lot about this in a lot more detail than I'm going to go into in this video, but what I want to go into is how this affects population growth. Now, I used to live in California, and I know for a fact that I've suffered from heavy metal poisoning, which is what they're spraying into the atmosphere, and tests prove this. There's actually documents that you can read, like in government, like plans and stuff, that this was like voted on, and there's people that talk about this. It's insane how much stuff is out there that people they don't even care to look at. And I was one of those people until recently. So I encourage anybody who thinks that I'm crazy or that this isn't real to please go and look this up, and you'll find out for yourself. Here's a list of symptoms that people will have when suffering from heavy metal poisoning. Now, this isn't all the symptoms, this is some of them, and it doesn't really say to what degree, but as you can see, there's quite a few, and not all of these are all that alarming. But let me tell you from my personal experience, the symptoms that I felt from having this metal poisoning. I was hospitalized a few months ago, and when I was in the hospital, they said that I had a potassium deficiency, and I take vitamins all the time, and I don't anymore because I don't need to, and I also eat a lot of fruits and veggies. So when they told me that I had a mega potassium deficiency, like it was critical potassium deficiency, I was like, why on earth would I have a potassium deficiency? I'm a totally healthy person. This makes absolutely no sense. Well, what I found out was that heavy metal poisoning, in its like really bad stages, will actually cause potassium deficiency, and it'll make your heart beat like in crazy rhythms and all this really bad stuff. The other thing that I noticed was my like testicles had actually swollen up, like the little connector things that run through them, they had swollen up with these heavy metals, and in fact when I peed it would burn, because these particles, I guess, were going through my pee, exiting my body, and it was scraping the inside of like my urinary tract, and it was actually burning. Like I had this burning sensation. I've been tested. This is not, an STD. This is, no, it was, I've been tested, and I'll tell you one thing that the tests proved. They said that I had an unidentified substance in my blood. Now, that's very strange because it's an unidentified substance, and I know exactly what that substance is now. It was all these metals that was in there, but at the time the doctors didn't really say. I kind of had to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So where am I going with this? Well, if they can spray this in the atmosphere and people don't realize what they're doing, well, it can stop you from reproducing because it will attack your reproductive organs. It's not just being used for weather manipulation. That's one of the things that they have used it for in the past, but I feel like what it's being used more towards now is being used to sterilize the masses. It's being used to slow people down from reproducing, and this is far more evident if you start to look at data on how many people are being born now with Asperger's syndrome, or like all these strange disorders that it used to be like 1 in 5,000 would be born with something like this, and now it's like 1 in 4. This is like crazy numbers, and science can't really explain this, but if you really look at the pieces of the puzzle, it starts to become more and more evident by the second. Anyways, I don't want to get too far into that. Another thing that I want to go into is another way that they've tried to control the population is with propagating transsexuality. So It used to be that there was certain people, and I'll explain this in a little bit of detail in case people don't know. There used to be something called like transgender identity disorder, something like that. You can look this up if you're really curious. Basically, what it means is this: if there's a fetus in the womb, okay, and your mother is pregnant, let's say for whatever reason your mother is on a high amount of some drug that causes her to produce more testosterone, or the drug itself has testosterone in it. Now, for example, let's say that the fetus inside the mother is a girl, as in it has the DNA makeup of a girl. So what happens when the mother has extremely high levels of testosterone in her blood when she's conceiving a girl, and this is only in the early stages of development. I've actually researched this, so I'm talking about it in a little bit of detail. The fetus begins to develop as a boy. So it will actually develop a penis, it will not develop a vagina, and at some point in time, if the levels of these hormones changes and readjusts to the natural levels that it's supposed to be at, the growth will actually reverse, and so the fetus will start to begin more like to develop more like a girl. And you can see pictures of this if you really want to. I mean, it's a real phenomena. It does happen. It's not that common. It is quite rare. So when you hear a boy coming out and saying I'm a woman, there's two things that could be happening. One is that the fetus was that of a girl in the mother, and the mother was exposed to high levels of testosterone, so that child who had the DNA of a girl began to develop a penis, and when it was born it was dubbed a boy because the doctor saw the penis and went, well, it's a boy. So you can go and research this if you don't believe me. This is fact. So what's happening now is that it's being propagated through mass media, and way more people than there ever have been transgender are now coming out and saying I'm actually a woman even though I was born a boy or a man or whatever you want to call it. This is completely unnatural. The rates of actual real transgender baby or hermaphrodites or whatever you want to call it was very rare. And it would be that some people had different sexual like preferences or ways of expressing themselves, and they could come out and say, well, this isn't how I truly feel inside, and people would choose to accept them at that point or not. But what's happening now is in a way the mass media propaganda machine is cultivating in the minds of the young people that they aren't what they think they are. And this is proven by a lot of big name celebrities who are now coming out and saying, well, I'm born a man or boy, but I'm actually a woman. And it's just completely ridiculous. It used to be in human society that it was sort of looked down upon and it was sort of taboo, but in the United States, it's growing in popularity, and it's totally unnatural. And I feel like it's a way of controlling the population, because if a boy goes and turns into a girl and starts taking estrogen, well, he's not exactly a good candidate to reproduce. So it's by default stunting the population growth. Now you might be wondering, well, okay, what do I do? You just told me that I'm being poisoned. You just told me that like they're cutting off my stuff so I don't make babies and all this crazy stuff. So, well, here's what you can do. There's this stuff called activated charcoal. There's been research of this done on mice. It actually showed that the mice lived like 40% longer when they ingested this activated charcoal. And what it is, it's basically a mineral. And when you ingest it, you want to absolutely get food grade, okay, food grade charcoal. What happens, you ingest it, so you'll mix it with water and you drink the water, and what it does is it goes into your belly and it goes in through your intestines, and this stuff binds to a lot of heavy metals, and it also binds to a lot of organic matter. So if you're suffering from poisoning, for example, if someone calls an ambulance because you overdosed on drugs like opiates, for example, or if you're suffering from food poisoning, the paramedics have this activated charcoal on standby. So the medical establishment knows all about this. They've been using it for a long time. They're just not sharing it with you, because the more you get sick, the more money they get to make, and really it's a business. Why would they tell you their trade secrets? They wouldn't. So you can go and buy this and you can drink it, and you can drink it for a couple of weeks. It's completely safe, and what this will do is it will suck all of the heavy metals out of you. I started taking this stuff a couple weeks ago, okay, and I'll tell you right now, I feel 100 times better than I used to. I used to be on pain medication because of my back pain. I'm no longer taking that. I used to have like this weird, strange swelling that started my testicles like, I don't know, years ago, and that's completely gone away. I used to have strange smells coming out of all sorts of different bodily fluids of mine that just did not smell natural or normal. And after I started taking this stuff, it completely went away. And a lot of people might think that I'm crazy or might want to make fun of me because I'm talking about all this like disgusting stuff. Well, realistically, this is something that I've experienced, and this just, I mean, if you guys don't want to believe me, knock yourself out, go do whatever you want to do. But if you want to actually try it, it's 18 bucks. You can buy less than this and try it for yourself and tell me the difference that you feel. I'll be really happy to listen to your feedback, and I'll be really delighted to hear that this actually helped your life. There's something else here called zeolite. This will actually remove the fluoride from the water. So my theory is that the heavy metals alone, it's just going to stunt population growth. It's going to slow down reproduction rates of people, and this hasn't really been studied very much, so there's not a lot of concrete data to prove any of this. So you kind of have to do the research yourself if you want to, which I'd totally encourage. But what I feel like is happening is a lot of these cancer-causing agents that are being introduced into our foods, like genetically modified ingredients and all this other stuff, is causing cancer rates to increase like way faster than they normally do. And having heavy metals in your body, one of the side effects is that it slows down your immune system, and it almost completely destroys your immune system. I felt this happening to me. So what this activated charcoal does is it will remove the heavy metals from your body, and it will allow your immune system to sort of get started again. After about taking this stuff for 2 or 3 days, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was alive again. I felt like I was dying, and I didn't know why. And after I took this stuff, I felt like I was alive again. Another interesting thing that you can do is you can take immune boosting mushrooms. Mr. Paul Stamets talks a lot about this. There are a variety of mushrooms that will actually boost your immune system and get your body's like defenses back up to where they need to be in order to fight cancer. So I think that what they're doing is a two-phase experiment. I think that if they just use heavy metals to kill off the entire population, it would look like a directed attack on the human population, and it would just not look good at all. So I think what they've done is they've broken it down into 2 phases. I believe that phase 1 was introducing cancer-causing agents into foods that we eat on a regular basis and disguising this as genetically modified, whatever they want to call it, who cares? And all this stuff like aluminum-containing products that we use like as body sprays and deodorants and all these lotions and stuff that have all these crazy things in them that all cause cancer. And because if you die from cancer, no one can turn around and point at the government and say the government did it. No, if you died from cancer, you died from cancer. It's as simple as that. Whether or not the government or corporations had funded the research that went into this stuff and the development of it and the manufacturing of it and the distribution of it, you know, and that is a totally different debate that I'm completely up for. If you want to get into that with me, feel free to do that. But if this is done in 2 phases, so phase 1 being cancer being spread through these ingredients, and phase 2 being immune system being compromised by heavy metals, it's much more difficult to prove and say that this one entity caused the damage, because now you're suffering from cancer, and at the same time you have these heavy metals in your blood that's preventing your immune system from doing what it's meant to do, which is protect your body from cancers. What a lot of people don't know is that your body can fight cancer on its own. If you watch this video with Mr. Stamets, he talks about how having these mushrooms in your diet will actually increase your chances of fighting cancer and living a lot longer than not. And the strange thing is, when you're on the cancer medications, some of them are okay. In fact, a lot of them are derived from mushrooms. But if you're going through radiation therapy, it weakens your immune system, so it makes you more susceptible to the cancer. So it's very, very bad for you. believe it or not. But the medical establishment, they know this. They just have invested far too much money into it already. And you know what? They don't want to save your life. They want you to die because there's way too many people on the planet. I'm not saying that. They've been saying it. I'm just repeating what's coming out of their writings and what's coming out of their mouths, basically. Um, so what you guys need to really do is research this stuff. Please don't take my word for it, but before you call me crazy, please go and do some research. Look at the samples that were taken from California lakes and rivers and the contents of their aluminum levels, and look at what aluminum does to the human body. Look at what it did to rats in experiments, and then go and look up what this activated charcoal does in the human body and how it increases the lifespan of rats by 40%. It also will remove the heavy metals, excuse me. Combined with the turkey tail mushroom, which boosts your immune system, this will fight cancer, which is being spread like wildfire throughout the world. This is not new. What I'm saying is not groundbreaking, revolutionary. This has been around for a long time. There have been lots of organizations that have been poisoning people without their knowledge, that have been trying to kill them without their knowledge. And this is just one of those things where you kind of have to, at some point, even though it sucks to know that you're living in a world like this, if you don't accept it and you don't do something about it, you're going to end up dead. So if you care and you want to find out more about this, please do so. If you want to share your findings, please do so. This is a very interesting video. I would recommend everybody watches this. I would really recommend everybody watches this. And I hope that you guys learned something. I hope that you guys are able to spread this and share this with other people, because I'll tell you right now, when I tried to tell my family members what was going on, they looked at me as if I was crazy. And you know what? I might be crazy, but as long as I feel like what I did helped my own body, and I've done this research, and I was able to conclude that yes, this is in fact happening, and it may or not be happening in the exact way that I've stated, but a variation of it is absolutely happening. And if you guys want to give some feedback and share the video, please feel free to do so. Thank you for watching.